Hello, everybody. This is Noah Frere. We're going to do a video podcast today about Pluto. As you may know, Pluto entered Aquarius yesterday, January 20th, 2024. But this isn't going to be about Aquarius or Pluto even entering Aquarius. This is just going to be about Pluto. This is part 2 of a 5-part series. So in part 1, which I wrote in last March, I talked about Pluto entering Aquarius for the first time, this time around after 250 years. And with Pluto moving through a sign, it's such an epic and long-lasting transit, I decided to break it into all these separate parts. So the first part was actually just about Capricorn. The second part is today, Pluto. And then in part 3, I'll talk about Pluto in Capricorn. In part 4, I'll talk about what does Aquarius mean. And in part 5, I'll talk about Pluto being in Aquarius, which will happen for the next 20 years, especially at the end of the year when it enters and doesn't go back into Capricorn again for another 230 years or so. So Pluto is the god of the underworld. Maybe that's enough? Podcast over? Well, that would be a little bit lazy, so Pluto would definitely not approve. Pluto is not lazy. It takes a lot of work to look after 1 billion lost souls. Can you imagine how Pluto feels? Jupiter, after conquering the old world monsters, those titans birthed from Father Sky and Mother Earth, also known as Uranus and Gaia, was kind enough, to bequeath 1/3 of the kingdom of nature to Pluto. Hell. Thanks, brother. You mean I don't get to see daylight anymore? Is Hell keeping a full-time job? Doesn't he get a vacation? Perhaps he had plenty of henchmen to watch the dead for him from time to time. But you know how the bad guys' subordinates are in the movies. They're always real dim-witted and make a flop of everything. Nonetheless, even if he did find time to get away from it all, maybe his eyes became so adjusted or maladjusted to the darkness that the brilliant light of the sun was too blinding to bear. Here's one way of thinking of Pluto. He didn't originally belong to the underworld, and he is not its proper ruler. Rather, the more ancient goddess Persephone, while symbolizing spring and flowers, is also, ironically, truly queen of that dark realm. The story goes that as she wandered around the earth, she noticed lost souls, ghosts, and took pity and was somehow gifted with the power to lead them to the underworld so that they could continue their journey to the next world, wherever that might be. Persephone, the psychopomp, has the unique ability to live partly underground and partly above. She is new, warm life springing from the cold, dark soil. She infuses us with buoyant spirit after spending time in the shadows of our subconscious. That's Persephone's heritage. However, as patriarchy began to dominate the old mythos, the male deities usurped the female ones. Pluto, then, was pronounced king of hell, and the story was retold so that Persephone was abducted by him to become his companion. Her role was reduced. Pluto, thus, in our culture, symbolizes dark, power-hungry underworld things. Power of dominion, death, destruction, taboos, restlessness, abuse. But since most deities have their light side as well, he also conveys psychological truth, power of might, resilience, renovation, detoxing, catharsis, amplification, and transformation. You can use any of these keywords for Pluto. But the shadow side of Pluto is not just the less attractive keywords above, but it's the fact that he absconded the good goddess of the underworld, the goodness of the underworld, perverting it from its spiritual role as a holy passageway to that of frightening and unknown sufferings, the dungeon. In its extreme, obvious form, this unfortunately becomes paradigms such as the fundamentalist Christian hell of eternal torment, one of the most nefarious lies perpetrated on the innocent, beautiful, and essentially good human mind. In a more subtle form, this becomes fear of death, loss of the knowledge of cyclical ways of being, and an inability to integrate our, quote, darker, unquote, instincts with our conscious way of being in the world and within our culture in a functional, healthy manner. This dynamic is incredibly difficult to unravel and seems to take decades within an intentional individual and millennia within an intentional society. It feels as though we've only scratched the surface on a collective level. And so Pluto also speaks to huge, protracted shifts within cultures in the world. He is ever so slow, but inevitable. We can hear Mr. Smith whispering through the ether. "You hear that, Mr. Anderson? That is the sound of inevitability. It is the sound of your death. Goodbye, Mr. Anderson." Only Pluto doesn't usually kill physical bodies, although he can do that. Rather, he is the slow death of an old, outworn systems and modes of thought caused by the process of evolution. One way, then, we can engage with Pluto in a helpful way is to give back the underworld to Persephone, to return the darkness to the light, or to let the sun's rays penetrate the shadows, to allow the passage of death to become a passage to the future, rather than fearful prison with no escape. Pluto can then relax a bit, slow his roll. He knows just way your dice will land. Lighten up and serve humanity's and our own transformations. He can assist Persephone and then take a trip to the Bahamas, probably with sunglasses. Let Pluto do Pluto's work, to do Persephone's work, and allow things to be as they are, using one Buddhist teacher's languaging. On a practical level, you can also see where Pluto and Persephone are in your natal chart and in the sky right now and analyze, or you can ask me to analyze with you. So in part 3, we'll bring the first 2 installments together and talk about the meaning of Pluto and Capricorn. In part 4, we'll define Aquarius, as I said, and then in the final installment, we'll talk about Pluto and Aquarius, where it will spend the next 20 years. Thank you all.